Son of man, go in among the house of Israel and speak my words to them. For you are not being sent to a people who speak an unintelligible language or an unknown tongue, but to the house of Israel. You are not being sent to many people speaking an unintelligible language or an unknown tongue, whose words you cannot understand. If I would send you to them, they would listen to you. But the house of Israel will refuse to listen to you, for they do not want to listen to me. All those of the house of Israel are hard-headed and hard-hearted.
This video is created primarily for Jehovah's Witnesses, as they are Jehovah's people. Greetings brothers and sisters around the world. My name is Son of Thunder, and I am one of Jehovah's Witnesses. This episode is a continuation of the previous episode, and it is inspired by Isaiah chapter 42 verse 18. As stated in the previous chapter, Jehovah's Witnesses are Jehovah's people, and because of that, we are blind and deaf, according to the Bible. In this episode, we shall explore ways in which we as an organization are blind. Jehovah said in Isaiah 42 verse 18,
"It was the case of seeing many things, but you did not keep watching. It was the case of opening the ears, but you did not keep listening."
Let's first go back to Noah's flood. Noah was told by Jehovah that it shall rain, that he should build an ark, and also preach to the world and warn them of the coming flood. Now, in Noah's time, there was no such thing as rain, the way we experience rain today. So it was very difficult for Noah to preach about something that has never happened in mankind's history. He became a laughing stock, but Noah was vindicated when it started raining, but it was too late then. The Apostle Peter continued the proverbial warning of Noah's flood, and he wrote in his second letter chapter 3 verse 6 and 7, which reads,
"By those means, the world of that time suffered destruction when it was flooded with water. But by the same word, the heavens and the earth that now exist, are reserved for fire, and are being kept until the day of judgment, and of destruction of the ungodly people."
Jehovah's Witnesses, we interpret this above verse as Armageddon. Unfortunately, this speaks about something else. The world we living in right now is confronted with at least two biggest crises ever, namely, global economic collapse and World War III. Jehovah's Witnesses in general have no idea of this impending global crises. It is as if we are under a great spell. We are fast asleep. Our leadership is also fast asleep. They saying nothing about this crisis. Hence true to Jehovah's words recorded in Isaiah 42 verse 18, which reads,
"Hear, you deaf ones, and look forth to see, you blind ones. Who is blind if not my servant, and who is deaf, as my messenger whom I send? Who is blind as the one rewarded, or blind as the servant of Jehovah?"
Here is a short video that indicates the looming global economic collapse.
Welcome to Cambridge House Live. I'm Bridget Anderson at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, and I am joined by Jeff Berwick, who is the founder and chief editor of the Dollar Vigilante. You also started Stockhouse.com back in 1994, and you have since sold it. Welcome. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Bridget.
When we last spoke last January, you weren't very optimistic about the global economy. What would you say about the state of the economy now?
I can't believe the changes in the last year. It's unbelievable. When I first started writing the Dollar Vigilante in about 2009, I thought, what am I going to write about every day? And now there's 10, 20 things to write about every single day. This system is in collapse, and it's unbelievable, and most people don't even see what's going on.
So what are the top things that are grabbing your attention right now?
Mostly, it's how the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve are reacting to all the problems. So you look at Paul Krugman. In the last year, he's come up with two plans, and he writes for the New York Times. His first plan was fake an alien invasion. And he said, what will happen is that everyone will create guns to fight aliens, and that will boost our economy. That didn't really work out. And then he said, well, let's make a coin and make it worth $1 trillion. We're in the last days of this financial system in the U.S. This is Zimbabwe.
Talk to me more about that, because there's a lot of people out there that say, you know, things are starting to turn around.
Yeah, if you watch CNBC, if you actually pay attention to the U.S. media, they will always tell you there's green shoots or it's going to be a recovery. There's no chance of that.
You don't think there are any signs of that?
It's not possible. The
Why?
U.S. government is now 40% of the GDP of the U.S. There's more people, there's 1 in 4 people on children on food stamps in the U.S. right now. 1 in 6 Americans are on food stamps. There's so much debt, so much government involvement in the economy. There's 11 states in the U.S. now that have more people on welfare than who have jobs.
And you don't think that the U.S. government can turn this around?
It's not possible. Government can never help anything. And the U.S. government is actually showing now that it really just hurts everything. And this ship is going down. This is the USSR in 1989.
That seems a bit dramatic.
I hate to bring the truth so honestly and so outspoken, and I'm sure the people on CNBC don't want to hear this.
Well, lots of people wouldn't believe you. They'd say, you know what, you're out in left field. You're nuts.
They would have said the same thing in 1989 with the Soviet Union. There were so many people who were still talking about, oh, that's a great, the communism is going to work. When it starts to collapse, it's going to happen very fast. We're not there yet. I believe it'll be a few more years. But if people don't start to wake up to what's going on, they're going to get hurt in this collapse.
All right, so that's your thought about the U.S. economy. What do you see happening globally then?
Globally? Well, most of the world is Western-based. A lot of the Europe, disaster. U.S., Canada, Australia, Japan, who also bought into these Keynesian central banking planning. Japan, I think, is going to be the first to fall. Not many people know this. Japan used to have massive surpluses in trade. After Fukushima, they shut down most of their nuclear plants.
Devastated their economy.
Totally, and it also meant they're now a net importer. They also have a very aging population, very xenophobic population, and the new president or prime minister, whatever they call the top criminal in Japan, has now said that they're going to try to inflate as much as possible. And I really believe that the yen is going to be one of the first to fall.
So you obviously have very strong beliefs. How do those beliefs shape the way that you approach your financial, the markets and your financial behavior and attitude?
Well, my beliefs aren't strong. They're just what I believe, and I say what I'm seeing. And most of the things you see on TV today are not real. We've actually lived in a completely false economy now for 40 years, since 1971. Ever since they took the gold backing away from the dollar, we've lived in a complete fairy tale economy. Almost everyone here probably has a car. They probably don't own it. It's probably leased. They probably have a house. They say they own it. It's probably a huge mortgage. It's a debt-based economy, and that's not the way to run an economy. And we're nearing the very end of this.
So once again, then, how does that shape the way that you approach your own financial portfolio?
Oh, me personally, I think it's very important. I really believe that we have to be. This is the most dangerous time in human history for capital, in my opinion. You have to be very safe. You shouldn't be going out there looking for big gains right now. You should just be trying to retain what you have.
And how do you do that then? How do you do that?
A big part of it is just precious metals. Own gold and silver, but don't just own them in your own country. Your own government is going to be your biggest enemy in the future. As these nation states collapse, they always try to take as much as they can from their own tax slaves.
So you diversify your holdings, and
Yes.
Are there any jurisdictions that you avoid?
The biggest jurisdiction that I avoid is the U.S. That's going to be ground zero for this economic collapse.
Oh, by the way, that interview took place just over 2 years ago. Things have worsened much since then. The other biggest global crisis, which is World War III, can either be triggered by the global economic collapse or vice versa, namely, World War III will trigger economic collapse. Whichever goes first, the other shall follow. At the moment, things are developing rapidly, especially after the 70th Union General Assembly that took place in September 2015 in New York. It is very clear the tensions between America and Russia is increasing by day. Tension between America and China is also increasing. Now Britain has increased their tension with Russia as well. Other countries are now taking sides and making the world a polarized place. Russia, China and their alliances versus Anglo-American, and their alliances. These are things that makes up World War III. If by any chance, you have no idea what is going on in the world, you know nothing about the imminent global economic collapse and World War III, and you are a Jehovah's Witness, then you are definitely in the right place, in Jehovah's organization. Here is another video. After watching this video you might not believe it. Don't worry, many people will not believe it either.
Now, the military side of our empire is just astonishing. These are the countries where the United States has troops or military personnel. Over 130 countries, 70% of the planet takes American troops, has American bases or American military personnel or arrangements with the United States. That's 70% of planet Earth. And still, 40% of our population says we do not have an empire. These are just the military bases of the United States in the Middle East. Every little star there is a military base. We've got the whole area covered. Okay? It is estimated that the United States has over 1,000 military bases, slightly less than 1,000 military bases outside of our country. Take a look at that picture. That is a satellite map of the Indian Ocean. Okay? In the very center of the Indian Ocean is a place called Diego Garcia. There's an island. We have a military base there. And you could ask, why would we have a military base in the center of the Indian Ocean? Okay? Why is there a base there with American soldiers and PXs and Wheaties that you can buy in the canteen? Why do we have a military base there? Are we patrolling the Indian Ocean? And why would the United States be patrolling? Are we there to defend India? It's hundreds of miles from India, hundreds of miles from Africa. What are we doing there? Do we want to have, maybe we have long-range bombers there, and the reason we have a base is so that we can extend our reach and be able to bomb any place on Earth that we choose. That base is 9,300 miles from our shores. Is that base there because we are protecting America or because we are monitoring and policing our empire? That's a question to consider. This is a picture of a naval armada with an aircraft carrier. We have 11 aircraft carriers. China is just building its first. When you look at all the armaments that the United States has, our military budget, our missiles, our reach across this planet, it is absolutely staggering. We are now developing a weapon called a hypersonic weapon. It's already been successfully tested. This weapon can travel about 4,000 miles an hour. It can bomb any place on Earth with incredible accuracy within an hour. So we have just about achieved the capability of bombing any place on Earth within 60 minutes. Why does the nation of the United States need that capability? The empire of the United States might need that capability, but the country of the United States, why would it need to be able to bomb any place on Earth within an hour? So I want to try you a guided fantasy. In psychology, a guided fantasy sometimes shakes up your mind a little bit and allows you new information to come through. So there may be people out there who resent the theme of what's going on here. And I would like to follow this fantasy out because I think it illustrates what we're talking about here. Let's pretend, okay? Imagine that you wake up in the morning and you see that the president of China has just shaken hands with the president of Mexico, and they have agreed to build a large Chinese military base in Baja California. Okay, it will house aircraft carriers, submarines, and troops. And it's a new bilateral relationship. And the Chinese say to the Americans, don't worry, we're just upgrading our Pacific presence. Oh, really? Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, they're going to become apoplectic. China is going to have a military base in our hemisphere. Give me a break. That's not acceptable. They're going to have an aircraft carrier 12 miles off the coast of Los Angeles and have spy planes listening to email and telecommunications in San Francisco up and down the California coast. Unacceptable. Absolutely. Even if it's in international waters, totally unacceptable. Then you wake up, and a month later, China has just signed a new agreement in Honduras that they are going to have a base in the Caribbean. They say, we're going to just upgrade our Caribbean presence. Shouldn't be threatened by that. We have a number of relationships with Caribbean countries, and we want to have a base there. And again, Americans are going crazy that they are going to have ships and planes and troops and be able to threaten Florida. Finally, you read another article that the Chinese have decided, with the cooperation of the government of the Bahamas, to build a new military base in New Providence, which is right near Nassau. It's 175 miles from Florida. It's going to have, it's $1 billion base, and it's going to house 20 warships. And again, our media is going to go crazy. This should we should break off relations with Mexico, break off relations with the Bahamas. We should quarantine the area and not let these ships in. After all, it's just like what the Soviets tried to do with Cuba a generation ago. We cannot allow this to happen. Again, they'll have ships 12 miles off the coast of Washington, D.C. and New York City listening to our communications. We cannot allow that to happen. Are you following this crazy thought? Well, this is not even close to reality. Agreed? Fine. Now let's come back to reality from our guided fantasy. Okay? This is a map of China. All right? And those little black planes are American military bases. We have 2 military bases on China's eastern coast. We have 4 military bases in China's southern region, and we have 4 military bases on the west section of China. We have 10 military bases surrounding China. We do to them all the time what we would never accept them doing to us. Okay, we actually do have. We're building a base in South Korea now that is a $1 billion base, which will house 20 warships, just like they were going to build in the Bahamas. It's 187 miles from the Chinese border. And we're building a $1 billion base. And we say we're just upgrading our Pacific presence. The Chinese should not be threatened by what we're doing. So what we're doing to China, we would never accept for China doing to us. It's just out of the question. There's China's one aircraft carrier, and it doesn't have any aircraft on it yet. They're just building it. So if you look at the United States reach with our 900 and some odd military bases, compare that to Russia. Russia has 10 overseas military bases, and almost all of them are in the former Soviet Union, like in the Ukraine. China doesn't have any overseas military bases. They're thinking of building one. Okay? How do we explain that, except to say that it is the American empire that has this incredible planetary reach, not simply our country. If you look at military expenditures of all the countries in the world, the United States makes up 43%. A few years ago, it was 48%. All the other countries in the world, and our military budget is about almost equal to what everybody else spends.
After watching that video, you might say, the guy is talking a lot of rubbish. There is no basis of what he says. Then, just listen to what the president of Russia, Putin, is saying, after he has been asked why is he being aggressive towards America. And this is what he said. Oh, by the way, you might have to read the subtitles if you do not understand Russian.
Вам спасибо большое за вопрос по поводу наших учений, маневров, развития вооруженных сил. И вы сказали, что Россия в известной степени внесла свой вклад в ту напряженность, которую мы сейчас наблюдаем в мире. Россия внесла свой вклад, но только в том смысле, что она все жестче и жестче защищает свои национальные интересы. Мы не атакуем, ну, в политическом смысле этого слова. Мы ни на кого не нападаем. Мы только защищаем свои интересы. И недовольство наших западных партнеров, прежде всего американских, связано с тем, что мы делаем именно это, а не с тем, что мы в сфере безопасности допускаем какие-то действия, которые провоцируют напряженность. И я поясню. Вот вы говорите о полетах нашей авиации, в том числе о полетах стратегической авиации. Знаете ли вы, что Россия в начале 90-х годов полностью прекратила, как это делал Советский Союз, полеты нашей стратегической авиации в отдаленных районах патрулирования? Мы полностью прекратили. А американские самолеты стратегические с ядерным оружием продолжали летать. Зачем? Против кого? Кому угрожали? И мы не летали и не летали, не летали и не летали, из года в год. И вот только пару лет, тройку назад возобновили эти полеты. Так кто провоцирует? Мы, что ли? Значит, у нас две базы практически только за границей. И то на террористически опасных направлениях. В Киргизии, после того, как туда зашли боевики из Афганистана, по просьбе киргизских властей, тогда Акаева президент. И в Таджикистане, тоже на границе с Афганистаном. Думаю, что и вы заинтересованы в том, чтобы там было все спокойно. И это обосновано, понятно и ясно. Американские базы по всему земному шару. И вы хотите сказать, что мы ведем себя агрессивно? Ну, здравый смысл-то есть или нет? В Европе что делают американские вооруженные силы, в том числе тактическое ядерное оружие? Чего там делают? Слушайте, у нас бюджет Министерства обороны на следующий год, он вырос. Но он в долларовом эквиваленте где-то, ну, чтобы мне не ошибиться, 50 миллиардов примерно. А бюджет Пентагона почти в 10 раз больше. 575 миллиардов, по-моему, утвердил Конгресс недавно. И вы хотите сказать, что мы проводим агрессивную политику? Ну, здравый смысл-то есть или нет? Мы, что ли, свои вооруженные силы выдвигаем к границам Соединенных Штатов либо других государств? Базы кто двигает к нам НАТО? Военную инфраструктуру? Не мы. Нас кто-нибудь слушает, хоть какой-то диалог с нами по этому поводу ведут? Нет, вообще никакого. Всегда в ответ только одно. Не ваше дело. Каждая страна имеет право выбирать свой способ обеспечения безопасности. Да, хорошо. Но тогда и мы тоже будем это делать. Почему нам это запрещено? Ну и, наконец, я уже говорил об этом и в послании. Систему противоракетной обороны. Кто вышел в одностороннем порядке из договора, который, безусловно, являлся одним из краеугольных камней всей системы международной безопасности? Мы, что ли? Нет. Это сделали Штаты. В одностороннем порядке вышли. Создают угрозы для нас. Разворачивают эти элементы стратегической ПРО не только на Аляске, но и в Европе. И в Румынии, и в Польше, прямо возле нас. И вы хотите сказать, что мы проводим агрессивную политику? Вопрос, хотим ли мы равноправных отношений? Да, хотим. Но при безусловном уважении наших национальных интересов. И в сфере безопасности, и в сфере экономики. Мы 19 или сколько там лет вели переговоры по присоединению к ВТО. Пошли на очень многие компромиссы. И всегда исходили из того, что эти договоренности являются железобетонными. потом, сейчас не буду говорить, кто прав, кто виноват. Я считаю, что мы правы в ходе украинского кризиса. Я уже об этом говорил много раз. И считаю, что наши партнеры Запада не правы. Но сейчас оставим это. Но мы присоединились к ВТО. Там есть правила. В нарушении всех этих правил и в нарушении норм международного права и Устава Организации Объединенных Наций в отношении российской экономики введены санкции в одностороннем порядке, абсолютно неправовым способом. Мы не правы опять. Мы хотим развивать нормальные отношения и в сфере безопасности, в борьбе с терроризмом. Мы будем работать вместе по нераспространению ядерного оружия. Мы будем вместе работать над такими угрозами, как распространение наркотиков, организованной преступности, распространение инфекционных заболеваний тяжелых, в том числе Эбола. Мы будем это все вместе делать. В том числе будем работать и в экономической сфере, если этого хотят наши партнеры.
As the Bible says, just like the days of Noah were, people were eating, drinking, getting married and planning their future, as if things are going to continue as they were. They did not take note until they were swept away by the flood. It is exactly the same thing, only this time it is not water, but by fire, in a form of nuclear war. And complete collapse of the global economy. Jehovah showed Habakkuk and Isaiah in a vision of something that will happen in the last days, in our current time. This is what Jehovah said.
Look among the nations, and pay attention. Stare in amazement, and be astounded, for something will happen in your days, that you will not believe, even if told to you.
Like the nations are ready, everyone is prepared to go to war, the stage is set. Here is another video to show how ready the nations are.
A senior defense official confirms to Fox News that 5 Chinese Navy ships have been spotted in the Bering Sea off the Alaskan coast. This sighting coincides with President Obama's visit to the state. In a few hours, China will also conduct a massive military parade in Beijing, featuring 10,000 soldiers, hundreds of aircraft, and weapons not previously shown in public. Defense officials say they're monitoring the Chinese activity closely.
The United States is closely watching a Russian military vessel that had been sailing near a U.S. nuclear missile submarine base. Defense officials say the ship is gathering intelligence against the U.S. nuclear missile submarines and other targets. That ship's been tracked from the northern Atlantic near Canada since late August as it's made its way past Florida, very close to the coast there, and now past Cuba. Senior national security correspondent David Martin joins us from the Pentagon. David, how concerned was the Pentagon about this Russian ship?
Well, this is something that navies from all countries do all the time, which is spy on each other's navies. What set this apart was that it was a brand new Russian research vessel, which made this long, slow transit down the east coast of the United States, and it's now completed its transit, and it's off the coast of Cuba, where it's expected to make a port call. This research vessel had underwater submersibles with it, which would be capable of going down to the ocean floor and mapping out the undersea communications cables that connect the U.S. to its forces in Europe and around the world.
So interestingly, here's President Obama in Alaska, and in the Bering Sea, you had Chinese warships there for the very first time, and this massive parade in China where they're showing off all of their military might, and at the same time, the Chinese president announces cutting forces by 300,000. I was struck by the odd timing there to show off how amazingly strong and massive your military is, and then to announce that you're cutting it by 300,000.
Well, I wouldn't call it a cut so much as a streamlining. For decades, the Chinese military has relied on quantity rather than quality. It has a massive, massive army. But it is trying to modernize itself and starting to build things like aircraft carriers and stealth jet fighters, which are the kind of technology that has made the U.S. military #1 in the world. And if it's going to do that, it has to take this outmoded army and make it much smaller. And that 300,000 cut is going to come mainly from the Army, and it's going to save a lot of money that can then be invested in more modern technology. And the purpose of this more modern technology is to build a force that is capable of keeping the United States further and further away from the Chinese mainland if it were ever to come to war.
David Martin at the Pentagon. David, thank you.
Sure thing.
A Russian ship comes what might be a little too close for comfort to a major American military installation, while China impresses and surprises during a muscle flexing in Beijing. National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin is keeping track of all of it from the Pentagon tonight.
A 70-gun salute in Tiananmen Square to mark the end of the war with Japan, a show of strength ahead of President Xi's visit to the White House later this month as China demonstrates its military prowess 70 years after the end of World War II. 12,000 Chinese soldiers marched through Beijing today. Also on display, a cruise missile known as a carrier killer capable of destroying an aircraft carrier at sea, and China's J-31 fighter jet, a near replica of the U.S. F-35, the most expensive weapons program in Pentagon history. The Chinese version, some say, engineered with stolen U.S. technology. Then a surprising announcement by the Chinese president, an admission that the Chinese economy, like the U.S., requires defense budget cuts.
I announced that China will cut its number of troops by 300,000.
Russian President Vladimir Putin watched from the stands. Russia and China recently finished rare joint naval exercises in the Sea of Japan.
Their navies have been working together now for a couple of years. We got to remember, going back to 2013 and the crisis in the Syrian civil war, Chinese and Russian vessels sortied together in the eastern Mediterranean as a warning to the United States and NATO.
Meanwhile, off the coast of the U.S. state of Georgia, a Russian spy ship capable of cutting cables and tapping into other underwater sensors passed within 300 miles of the U.S. ballistic missile submarine base at Kings Bay, home to the U.S. Navy's Ohio-class fleet, whose boomers are capable of firing multiple warheads that can strike up to 240 cities at once.
Furthermore, those 5 Chinese warships that were seen in the Bering Sea while President Obama was visiting Alaska, they have since reversed course, we're told by Pentagon officials, Brett.
And Jen, what about these new attacks by ISIS using chemical weapons?
Well, Brett, new evidence tonight that ISIS has launched more attacks using mustard agents. In response, the Pentagon has ordered its 3,500 troops in Iraq to dust off their chemical suits and refamiliarize themselves with their protective equipment. ISIS has fired more shells at Kurds, causing painful blisters, and a rocket near the Mosul Dam, which left a mysterious yellow cloud in the air, Brett.
Okay, we'll follow it. Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon.
It is unthinkable. What will Jehovah do? He shall allow a third world war to come upon the earth, for it shall be Jehovah's day. A day of reckoning for many people and nations. Here is what Isaiah saw in a vision. Raise up a signal on a mountain of bare rocks. Call out to them, wave your hand, so that they may come into the entrances of the nobles. I have issued the command to those whom I have appointed. I have summoned my warriors to express my anger, my proudly exultant ones. Listen. A crowd in the mountains. It sounds like a numerous people. Listen. The uproar of kingdoms, of nations gathered together. Jehovah of armies is mustering the army for war. They are coming from a distant land, from the extremity of the heavens, Jehovah and the weapons of his wrath, to bring ruin to all the earth. Wail, for the day of Jehovah is near. It will come as a destruction from the Almighty. That is why all hands will go limp, and every man's heart will melt with fear. The people are panic-stricken. They are seized with convulsions and pain, like a woman in labor. They look at one another in horror, with faces inflamed by anguish. Look! The day of Jehovah is coming, cruel both with fury and with burning anger, to make the land an object of horror, and to annihilate the land sinners from it. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give off their light. The sun will be dark when it rises, and the moon will not shed its light. I will call the inhabited earth to account for its badness, and the wicked for their error. I will put an end to the pride of the presumptuous, and I will humble the hardiness of tyrants. I will make mortal man scarcer than refined gold, and human scarcer than the gold of Ophir. That is why I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken out of its place at the fury of Jehovah of armies in the day of his burning anger. Like a hunted gazelle and like a flock with no one to gather them, each will return to his own people. Each will flee to his own land. Whoever is found will be pierced through, and whoever is caught will fall by the sword. Their children will be dashed to pieces before their eyes, their houses will be looted, and their wives will be raped. Here I am raising up against them the Medes, who regard silver as nothing and who take no delight in gold. Their bows will shatter young men, they will show no pity on the fruit of the womb, nor mercy to children. All of them come bent on violence. The assembling of their faces is like the east wind, and they scoop up captives like sand. They scoff at kings and laugh at high officials. They laugh at every fortified place. They pile up a dirt ramp and capture it, then they move forward like the wind and pass through, but they will become guilty, because they credit their power to their God. Are you not from everlasting, O Jehovah? O my God, my Holy One, you do not die. O Jehovah, you appointed them to execute judgment. My rock, you established them for punishment. Your eyes are too pure to look on what is evil, and you cannot tolerate wickedness. Why then, do you tolerate the treacherous, and keep silent when a wicked man swallows up someone more righteous than he is?
Isaiah chapter 13 verses 3 to 18, and Habakkuk chapter 1 verses 9 to 13.
I heard and my belly began to be agitated. At the sound my lips quivered. Rottenness entered my bones, and in my situation, I was agitated, that I should quietly wait for the day of distress, for he is coming up to the people, that he may raid them. This is how Habakkuk felt after hearing the word of Jehovah, and seeing in a vision, about the bringing the entire earth into ruin. Recorded in his book chapter 3 verse 16. If you think World War I and II were the worst wars in the history of mankind, wait until you experience World War III. All of this is not seen by Jehovah's people, but it shall come. Jehovah will rightly say to us, it was the case of seeing many things, but you did not keep watching. It was the case of opening the ears, but you did not keep listening. I thank you for watching. Join me on another episode, to gain understanding as to why might Jehovah be angry at us as his organization.
Son of man, you are living in a rebellious house. They have eyes to see, but they do not see, and ears to hear, but they do not hear, for they are a rebellious house. As for you, son of man, prepare for yourself luggage for going into exile. Who is wise? Let him understand these things. Who is discreet? Let him know them, for the ways of Jehovah are upright, and the righteous will walk in them, but the transgressors will stumble in them.